All right, guys, welcome to Motor Racing Podcast. We are here on a Friday with another edition of the Hub. We have got a lot to cover. Big weekend. Don, how are you been today, buddy?
Oh, just another beautiful Friday. Looking forward to talking about some racing. We got quite a bit to cover. We're looking forward to Gateway this weekend. They're in St. Louis, Missouri. Looks like we can get started with trucks, man. What do you got for me?
Man, trucks coming to Gateway. It's always one of those races that's tossed up in the air. We know who's going to be good here. We know who's absolutely going to roll off the truck with speed, right?
Right.
But with this kind of racetrack, and we got into a little bit last night. This is one of those roll of the dice tracks because of the two different ends. So just because you roll off with speed doesn't mean necessarily you're going to be good in both sides of the racetrack.
Right.
So always expect Heim time this weekend, man. Always expect Corey Heim to be one of those boys that rolls off the truck quicker than quick, and have a good run out there. I've got to say, I think this week, Lane Riggs, and I know I've been saying that all season, but every week this kid gets better and better and better. I mean, look, so we had trucks this past week. I can't remember where he finished. He had a really good run in truck, ran really good at North Wilkesboro. Um, I've got a good feeling about Lane Riggs this week. As far as the rest of the field, like I said, it's a roll of the dice, man. It's just the truck series, and I think it's ramped up the last couple of weeks. And I don't know if it's because we're hitting the mid mark in the middle of the season, and people are like, well, I guess we better hurry up and start getting stuff done and start winning some races and getting some points. And I hate that a lot of people feel like now is the time because you feel like Daytona is where everybody's season starts. Um, do you feel like maybe a lot of the bad luck that some of these guys have had, like Matt Crafton and Ben Rhodes, some of those guys, do you feel like maybe this racetrack could turn around for them this weekend?
Oh, absolutely. And that does there's a number of tracks in the schedule where a driver's season can just flip a switch and all of a sudden they're making a steamroll line to the playoffs. Carry a lot of momentum in the last 10, 11 races heading in towards the end of the regular season. It's amazing what a string of top fives, top tens, maybe even a win will do for a driver's confidence, for a team's confidence moving forward. Um, we haven't brought up Raja Karuth yet, and I think it's important to remember that Raja, with his win this season, and he's getting some consistent finishes on top of that, he's gonna be one of those names that's gonna pop up in the playoffs. Like, whoa, we forgot this guy's hungry, man. He's out here to prove a point. Of course, with HendrickCars.com on the side of his truck, that's always going to be a boost for any driver, really. And of course, Lane Riggs is a great choice as far as in that 38 Ford. But don't count out your Brett Holmes. Always shows really good speed here at Gateway. Um, Someone else I wanted to bring up was uh, and
Excuse me.
I don't remember his damn name now.
There was a guy that I wanted to bring, Honeycutt.
Honeycutt and Grant Enfinger. I'm so sorry. I'm Grant Enfinger in that nine truck. Like just his work speaks for itself, man. He's going to be fast and he's going to be there at the end. And Nick Sanchez.
Nick Sanchez, man. So Nick's got 2 wins on the season. This is his second. He didn't run a full-time schedule last year, I don't believe, did he?
I don't think so.
Okay, so first full-time truck schedule, and you got 2 wins.
Yep.
That says a lot about the kid, especially in the truck that he's in. Now I know the truck that he's in really probably doesn't necessarily have anything to do with it because we saw Sheldon Creed win multiple times in this truck.
Right.
But no shots at Sheldon, but Nick Sanchez, man, he seems to be able to put more results and more speed out in that truck than Sheldon was ever able to.
Right.
So I feel like a talent level has got a lot to do with it and with these trucks because it used to be between the Xfinity and the Cup cars, you used to be able to gain track experience in an Xfinity race and take it over to a Cup race. but you can't do that anymore. But with the trucks going to something else, there's nothing that you can compare to those guys because they drive so different. There's nothing that you can compare from the trucks to Xfinity or Cup minus the 5 lug nuts, and that's pretty much it.
Right.
So, and we've seen some of these guys struggle and struggle and struggle. Look at I don't want to use Noah Gragson as an example, but I'm going to use Noah. Drove for Kyle Busch Motorsports, had some good runs. I believe he had 2 wins over 2 or 3 years, and then hops in an Xfinity car for Junior Motorsports and rattles off 13 of them.
Yep.
Like so that right there should just tell you, and we know Noah's got talent. Look where he's at now.
Right.
Several top 5, several top 10s. Should have maybe had a win or 2 already this season.
Right.
So that says a lot about just how difficult these trucks really are to drive, especially when you get these guys that are like, man, it's when you pancake the wall on that right side. Because for those of you that don't watch the race as closely, watch the truck race this weekend. When that camera pans down the front stretch, look how angled and sideways these trucks look. Look how they look like they're crab walking.
Right.
And it's that right downforce, and it's what makes that truck so hard to drive. And that's why everybody's like, oh, it's just the truck series. Who gives a shit? You watch the trucks. Yeah, you watch trucks. Those guys go down there. They rally up. They put on a show.
Yep.
And to be able to drive, and a lot of these guys like the challenge. I feel like that's a lot of the reason why Matt Crafton hasn't left the truck series.
Right.
He's had his hot seat moments driving for Wood Brothers Racing and a couple of the other guys. But I feel like most of those guys feel like the truck series is home because they like the challenge. They like the people. Of course, every series you go up, you got different people behind you, different sponsors, different cars. But it's just something about that truck series, man, that's just, it gets me hyped up. You have that first race, you're like, man, I'm ready for the Cup race. And you turn that truck race on, and by the end of it, you're like, screw the rest of the weekend, man. Like that was it.
Right. That fulfilled everything I needed, and I still got a couple more races to enjoy.
And that gets you super pumped because then you're like, man, this Xfinity race, this Cup race is going to be. And so far this season, there's been, like we talked about, there's been a couple races as far as Cup that's gone that we've been like, okay, good racing, could have been better. Let's move on to next week. And there's been some races that we've absolutely been like Lord. Holy crap. Kansas, Atlanta, the All-Star race. I mean, it just goes on. And that first race, if that sets the tone for the weekend.
Right.
If the truck race sucks, which 9 times out of 10 it doesn't, but you do get that off week where there may not be no passing, there may be one leader from start to finish, but you get that in every series.
Right.
We saw that with the All-Star race. Joey Logano led every lap but one.
Was there an All-Star race?
Yeah. Who? Yeah. I mean, who even won that? Because the only thing I can remember is Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse.
Yeah, man. Something. I guess there was a race that day. I don't remember.
But no, it's just the first race of the weekend, and that's what sets the tone for the rest of the weekend. And I feel like the Xfinity and Cup guys, when those truck guys go out and put on a show, that they feel that pressure, that they've got to go out there and be able to compete and equal the excitement and just the roar of what those truck guys did the night before.
Right.
And I feel like that's what amps the weekend up. You start with a truck race. It was just awesome. And it only goes from there and keeps building. And of course, if we'd have been able to finish the Coke 600 this weekend, I'm sure we'd have been in for a hell of a treat.
Man, I tell you what, especially with the way the mile and a halves have been this season, I mean, there's no telling what we were in store for if they turn those boys loose for 100, 150 laps. And just the quality of racing at these intermediate tracks has been absolutely beautiful. I don't know really what did it, but man, who we got? Who's jumping in here with us?
Hey, it's me. What's up?
What's up, Jordan?
I just thought I'd pop in and say, what's up?
Yeah, I was just about to give us some truck times. They're about 10 laps into practice right now. We got number 1, Titan Majeski. Christian Eckes is second fastest. Lane Riggs, Matt Crafton, Nick Sanchez. Pretty much all the guys we listed as we thought would be the favorites to win. Grant Enfinger, Ty Dillon, Corey Heim, Ben Rhodes, Chase Purdy rounds out your top 10 in practice.
And I would just like to say that 45 truck of Connor Mozak we haven't mentioned him, if at all, the last couple weeks. And we've got to take a minute and mention this kid. He's racing the 45 for Nice Motorsports. To me, Ross Chastain and Carson Hocevar put Nice Motorsports on the map for the truck series.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And with all the sponsors and the backing and the money they've got now, Connor Mozak came from a background that we never heard of Connor until he stepped foot in the truck. And this kid has been absolutely on fire behind the wheel of his 45 truck.
Yep.
Congratulations to him. And I'm excited to see
I just wanted to pop on and say what's up, and hope y'all have a good show. Okay, I just want to stop. This is producer. I just want to stop in, be a producer for once in my life, and see how my boys are doing. Y'all doing good?
Yes, sir.
Hey, great show yesterday, guys.
Hell yeah.
That was a good listen. I got some people at work. I got some people that's probably gonna be following us. So,
hey, the more the merrier. Tell them to share. Tell them to get the word out there.
Bring it on.
Yes,
like,
sir.
share, subscribe, everything that comes with it, man. Every little bit helps.
Yep.
Friday nights, we're gonna do Friday night like a Saturday night, man. We're gonna pull them belts tight, and we're gonna get after it.
Yep, that's right.
Yep. But I'm just gonna throw my predictions real quick, and then I'm gonna jump off of here. For the IndyCar series, I say Joseph Newgarden goes back to back. Corey Heim wins the truck. We got Xfinity this weekend in Portland. I'm going to say SVG wins that because it's a road course. And then for the Cup side, I say Tyler Reddick gets a win. And for IMSA, pulling for Team Penske.
Right on.
Hey,
Can't argue.
No, sir. But I will talk to you gentlemen on Tuesday. Y'all have a good night.
Be
Yes,
safe, bud.
sir.
Have a good weekend.
Yes, sir.
man, it's just it's just ramping up. Truck series is ramping up. We're getting ready. I think they only run 10 races less than what the Cup Series runs, I believe.
Correct.
So we know, and I feel like that's why our truck racers are so just out there and amped up from drop of the green flag to the drop of the checkered, is because they don't have those extra 10 races to be able to put points out there and get stage wins and all that stuff. So these guys, man, and they're so aggressive. And Gateway is one of those tracks that you can be absolutely as aggressive as need be.
Right.
Man, I'm excited. I feel like it's going to be a good weekend of racing. I know we're on 2 separate race tracks this weekend, with Xfinity being in Portland. We'll get to that here in a second. But Don, how do you feel about how this truck season has already gone, man?
The truck season has been so much fun. I mean, all the way across the board, from Daytona all the way through All-Star Weekend. I know they didn't have an All-Star race, but they were there at All-Star Weekend putting on a show for everyone. I love the trucks, man. They get after it. They slip and slide. They ram into each other. They move each other. They without using words, they tell each other, I'm here to win, and I don't care who's in my way, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to go get it. I'm going to go get these trophies. And we also haven't mentioned that these guys are racing for a possibility in a future in Xfinity, and they're racing for a possibility of
or a possible seat in Cup.
In Cup one day. You know, that style of racing, that mentality is going to bring out, you know, a lot of different competitiveness from a lot of different men and women as their careers progress. We've heard it before from guys in their interviews. You never know when your last race is going to be. You could in the middle of the week, you could leave the race shop, get in a car accident, break your leg, and it could be the end of your career. I mean, that's how it's not likely, but what I mean is every race could be their last race. And so they're trying to make the most of it each and every single weekend. And I think it's a lot of fun. And to those listening, if you still haven't caught a truck race for some reason, get your butt in front of a TV and check out those boys get
and support those guys, because all these guys, this is the future of the sport.
Right.
These Cup guys, Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, these guys are not going to be here to run forever. We just watched Kevin Harvick retire.
Right.
Who would have thought in a million years we'd have saw that day come?
Well, look, we were talking about retirements. I mean, the last 5-6 years has really been, I mean, just beat us up hard. Your Jeff
A
Gordon, your
roller
Dale Earnhardt
coaster,
Jr.'s,
yeah.
Carl Edwards, Matt Kenseth, Tony Stewart. Like man, there have been a lot of guys that have retired here lately.
And I know with Jimmy Johnson, he's back running a part-time schedule with a new part ownership of that Legacy Motor Club over there with I don't think Richard Petty's got a hand in it anymore, does he?
I'm not entirely sure how much he actually messes with it. Did he sell off his full stake in the actual race team?
I want to say he did, but I'm not 100% certain on that.
Right, and he's still at the racetrack pretty much every weekend anyway. You can't miss his feather cowboy hat. So, as much as if he's not involved in Legacy, he's still very much involved in the sport.
In NASCAR as a whole, oh yeah. I mean, who was it? Samantha Bush just posted on her story last weekend, I believe. She was sitting up in one of the suites and was sitting up there with Richard Petty.
Wow.
So he was at the Coke 600. So he's got the man won 200 Cup races. Okay, and for
Not
those
by
of you that,
accident.
and no, not by accident. Now, a lot of you that are listening maybe not know the history to that. Richard Petty, who we call the King, raced back from the 60s all the way up to, I believe, the early 90s.
Yeah. His last race was Jeff Gordon's first race, if I remember correctly.
95, right?
Right. Or 93?
Was it 93?
I think 93. Yeah, because Jeff Gordon won Rookie of the Year in 1993.
You got 200 Cup wins, and we'll go in a little bit of detail about this, because for those of you that say we have a new king in NASCAR, and we're referring to Kyle Busch. The only difference between Kyle and Richard is that Richard's all 200 wins are all Cup. Kyle's is 63 Cup wins, 103 Xfinity wins, and I believe 64 truck wins. And he holds the most all-time record for all-time wins in Xfinity and Truck Series.
Right.
But a lot of people think or compare the two. Championships are harder to win nowadays, and we're not racing as much as we were back in the day. Richard Petty was winning 3 or 4 Cup races a week.
Right.
And we're running 1 Cup race a week and only 36 point-paying races out of the year.
So it's safe to say if Kyle was running the amount of races that Richard ran back in the day, he'd probably be right around that 75-80% of Cup wins if he ran that amount of races.
And no disrespect to the King at all. I feel like if Kyle Busch given the opportunity 3 or 4 Cup races a week, Kyle Busch definitely would have surpassed Richard Petty.
Probably.
In Cup wins.
Probably.
And that, like I said, that's not a shot at the King, because 2 different eras, both are going to be legends in NASCAR. Kyle Busch has laid out 150% a Hall of Fame career. And if there's somebody out there that says Kyle Busch doesn't belong in the NASCAR Hall of Fame, where have you been? What races are you? What sport are you watching?
That would be a complete biased response. Anybody who knows NASCAR, anybody that knows racing, knows that as soon as Kyle Busch retires, he's going to be a first ballot. It's not going to take 5 years. It's going to be first ballot right across the board. There's no way that dude doesn't make the Hall of Fame immediately.
And then jump into that, but having his hands in as much as Richard Petty does, I feel like he's got his hands in it more than what he already did.
Right.
He was able to sell off that Cup team. Jimmy, even if he doesn't have anything in it, selling it all off, still rooting down there. He goes out there and hangs out we've seen him down on the grid. Hanging out with Eric Jones and John Hunter Nemechek. So I feel like he's still welcome at the race shop. He's still got a hand in those boys' career as far as advice. Because who else besides maybe if Dale Earnhardt were still alive, that's probably who I go to for advice for racing. Richard Petty, if that man decides to give you advice on racing, you need to shut up and listen.
Yep.
And I feel like that's why Eric Jones has run as well in that 43 car as he has. I mean, we haven't seen but 1 win from him in this 43 car, but that's not to say he can't easily get out of, a slump or figure out what the hell that he's trying to figure out. and start rattling off wins like nobody's business, and who knows, championships.
Right.
So, if you don't listen to Richard Petty or some of these legends, who was it? My buddy of mine was just out at a racetrack, dirt track 2 weeks ago. Red Farmer is 91 years old and still behind the wheel of a late model dirt car, bro.
Yep.
And he's still winning races.
Yep.
I don't care who you are. That's 91 years old, almost completely blind, out running a race car and winning races at 91 years old. That's
special.
That it really is. And I've texted him. He's not gotten back to me. I would really love to go out to that particular racetrack, even if I got to go out to cross the country, if that's where he's at. I would love to go watch a legend like Red Farmer run a traditional dirt race. How big that, man, that would be so how big of a treat would that be, man?
Right.
We're getting into reminiscing. Man, it's when you get it's hard not to when you get guys like that who are still out there racing and putting on a clinic.
Right.
For
That's
all
those
these
free lessons, man.
Red Farmer, who, if Fireball Roberts was still here, Red Farmer, Fireball Roberts, all those guys, Tim Flock, get as much, and all these youngins for you, like, and Chris, this goes for you too, buddy. Get that advice. If you guys come across at a race, even if you're not racing, if I'm in Bristol and I come across Richard Petty, I'm going to ask for a little bit of racing advice. So, and
Waltrip, Terry Labonte,
Michael Waltrip, my daughter actually just met him. My little 5-year-old, I've got a picture somewhere, got to meet Michael Waltrip a couple weeks ago at Bristol.
Nice.
And he is one of the sweetest guys, down to earth. He is just he knows where he comes from,
right.
And he knows,
forget where he comes from.
Exactly. And those types of guys, now there's a lot of guys in the Cup Series or even racing right now in truck and Xfinity that are like, screw the fans, screw this. I'm here to win races. Like, I believe that's where Danica Patrick's career went. When she made the comment, she said, I'm here to drive. I'm not here to sign autographs. There went her career right out of the window.
I don't understand where that mindset comes from. Like, what career do you think you're in where you can look people in the eye that literally pay your contract literally and tell them, I'm not here for the fans, I'm here to go drive? Like, we all know the drivers are out there to drive. That doesn't need to be said. But you're still out there to be an entertainer. You're there to engage with the fans. You're there to make memories with people and their children that they can take with them forever.
And us fans are not entitled to anything, and that's what
No.
what me and Don are getting at all.
No.
But in a sense, without the fans, there's no sponsorship coming in because there's no merch being bought. There's no money being put into the sport. And if there's no money being put into the sport, sponsors are pulling out. There's nobody on the car. You don't have money in your car. You don't have speed. You're not winning races.
I can't believe she said that. And it doesn't surprise me that it all came apart right after all that happened. So aside from wrecking race cars every single week, but whether
she looked good in a bikini, that's the only really good thing I got to say about Danica.
Yeah, there's 4.2 billion women out there that look good in a bikini. So
doesn't mean they can drive.
She was wasting a race spot is what was going on, and it's unfortunate, but that era's over, and there's a reason she's not racing anymore.
Well, we'll hop over Xfinity since we're talking about women in the sport. Hailie Deegan, man, I feel like this season she's learned a lot about this car. Granted, she hasn't had the finishes or more DNFs than anything, or finishing laps down, whether it's due to something out of her control or something that she did to herself. I believe Hailie's got the talent. This team needs to turn something around.
Right.
She won a bunch of K&N East and West races. Didn't really. Me and Jordan both feel like she got done dirty down in the Truck Series.
Why is that?
just because of the crew chief swap. There was a lot of people, and I'm not going to say that there's 100% proof out there, but there was a lot of talk through the garage and the fan base that a lot of the money and a lot of the resources, at least 75% of it, was going to her teammate's truck. They signed Haley to pretty much make a name, say, okay, we put a woman in our truck. If she wins races, she wins races. If she don't, well, oh well. And I feel, go ahead.
Do you think that's that's a personal choice on Haley's part? Like, no one forced her to take that seat, and she very well could have applied, but gone after other opportunities in the truck series where she wasn't put in that position, you know?
I do believe that Haley is partly at fault for that. I do, because you do have the choice whether you sign with this team or that team.
Right.
Nobody's pressuring you. Now, I don't know what the other brothers or what her dad, I know from her channel and things that we see on ESPN that her brothers and her dad are very supportive of what she does.
Right.
They back her 110%. So I see with the truck deal, though, I feel like Ford came to her and was like, we want you to sign with us. Leave Toyota. And I feel like, I'm not dogging Ford, but I feel like she jumped at the opportunity rather than waiting to see what other opportunities came at her. Right. I know there was big talk about Kyle Busch Motorsports potentially signing Haley Deegan. That would have rewrote history in the truck series right there, because we know damn well Haley Deegan would have been rattling off wins in a KBM truck.
And so it makes you wonder why KBM didn't.
I feel like maybe Haley, I feel like maybe signed that deal before Kyle or whoever did the contract signings over at KBM didn't get to her quick enough and in time.
Okay.
And the only reason I say that is because she was a Toyota development driver, like I said, 4 wins in the East and West series. Why not try to stick with Toyota? Why are you going to jump ship? Toyota's obviously been good to you with 4 wins. Why not? Yeah, see, but money doesn't really do her any good when her career is going down the toilet, when she's not getting top 15s, top 10s, top 5s, and wins.
Correct.
She could have easily done that in a Toyota Tundra over at KBM.
Right. When do we start asking about, rather than the equipment or the team, when do we start talking about Haley as a person, as a driver? Is it probable to us? Would it be accurate to say that Haley might not be as talented as advertised, and that's why she's not able to keep up with the guys in the Xfinity series?
I feel like that's got a part of it too.
Okay.
Because, all these drivers, equipment's got a lot to do with it, but you have to have, I can stick my 5-year-old in a Kyle Busch Motorsports truck. Doesn't mean that she's going to go out and win races.
Right.
And I know that's silly to say because she's 5, but she's got talent. And how to put this? Equipment only goes so far.
Right.
The speed in that truck is only going to get you so far if you don't have somebody behind the wheel that knows what to do with it and how to drive it.
If you're not able to maximize everything you're getting out of your race vehicle, then that's when you start questioning the driver's ability, because we know you put Kevin Harvick, you put Jeff Gordon, you put all these big names, champion winners, in lesser equipment, and they'll find a way to get that car or truck up towards the top 10, top 5 consistently.
And I mean, it's not, and to prove your point, it's not all equipment. Look at now, Spire they bought Kyle Busch Motorsports. So if you take that sticker off the front of those trucks, essentially you're still running Kyle Busch Motorsports chassis and motors.
Right.
So, I mean, but Kyle was able to jump in a Spire Motorsports truck, and he's won 1 or 2 truck races this year. Finished behind Christian Eckes at Bristol, had problems at Darlington, but Kyle Busch was able to go out with the Spire Motorsports truck that wasn't necessarily known to have speed in previous years, and go out and win races and compete for top 5 finishes and compete for those wins. So it's not just the equipment.
And you bring up Kyle Busch, and we've already talked about it this episode, Ross Chastain and Nice Motorsports. Carson Hocevar, same thing, with a little bit lesser equipment, but still managed to get that truck up front.
and they were able to do the talent that they were able to do. And when they were able to bring those results in, that's when all the eyes started coming in, and that's where the equipment gets better. But the driver has to be able to do their job in order to bring better equipment to the racetrack.
Right.
And she's not doing that.
All right. So to piggyback on that, let's get some of the entry list for Xfinity at Portland. I believe they run at, I want to say 2 p.m., but for some reason NASCAR is not giving me a time. Cole Custer, Sam Mayer.
Race will be at 4:30. Sorry, Xfinity race will be at 4:30.
No, you're good. Thank you for getting that for me. Patrick Gallagher, Anthony Alfredo, Garrett Smithley, Justin Allgaier, Logan Bearden, Sammy Smith, Brandon Jones, Josh Williams, Haley Deegan. There was one name that popped up here, but it looks like it switched around on me.
I just want to say something real quick. Josh Bilicki is running a Joe Gibbs Racing car this weekend.
Yep, and that 19 Toyota, yep.
Let's see what kind of talent and what kind of things Josh Bilicki can do, because we've seen him in Go Fast Cars and Spire and these smaller teams.
Yep.
Let's see what he does in some top-tier equipment.
We'll follow that one really closely because that'll be some good stuff to rebound on Tuesday during the show, and drivers in lesser equipment, and then getting that opportunity and some awesome equipment.
Frankie Muniz will also be making another start this weekend for Joey Gase Motorsports in that 35.
35 Ford from Arizona. Yeah, absolutely. You got Kyle Seed, Jeb Burton, Sage Karam, Ed Jones, Austin Hill. Look for Austin Hill to bounce back. I know he just swallowed that $25,000 fine and 25 championship points. So look for him to kind of have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. Not that he doesn't carry one anyway. Matt DiBenedetto in that 38 from California. He's raking.
Man, he did really well this past weekend.
Yeah, shout out to Matty D. Absolutely. Viking Motorsports with him. You still got Ryan Sieg looking for that first win, man. He kind of fell off a little bit after Texas, but that was after that much of an emotional high. It doesn't surprise me to kind of see a little bit of a fall off on that. Parker Kligerman, Jeremy Clements. I mean, this field is stacked, bro. Shane Van Gisbergen, Riley Herbst, Kyle Weatherman, Chandler Smith. All these boys are going to be getting after it at that road course. Have we checked the weather in Portland yet? Because it usually rains up there in the Northwest.
It does. And every year, the last 2 races they've had up there, it's been pouring rain. And while you look that up, I've got to say, so we know that Cole Custer is probably going to end up somewhere next year where we're not bothered and worried about Cole Custer, right?
Right.
What kind of pressure does this put on Riley Herbst in that 98 to be able to make sure that he's got a ride for next year? He's got to be able to perform the rest of the season.
He's going to perform. I think Riley's going to be just fine. He shows tremendous speed each and every week. I think he's gotten caught up in messes that weren't his fault towards the front of the pack, where he's getting in these little, and that's, who's to say that that's not self-inflicted anyway, like putting himself in position to be in a bad spot. Regardless, Riley Herbst, I don't think has anything to worry about. The kid's got tremendous talent. He's in a fast race car. He's got good equipment. I don't think right now Riley has anything to worry about. If he's not going to be in that equipment, somebody else is going to pick him up immediately.
And I feel like, so Riley doesn't have a win this year yet, does he?
Does not.
So I feel like that'll come. I feel like Riley's got a little more pressure just because he doesn't, and this is no shot, but this is, he doesn't perform as well as Cole Custer.
Right.
Now he does get into these little things, a lot of it out of his control. And it's really sad because Riley gets these good runs going and something happens. Right. And he gets some of those races. I'm like, man, this is Riley's race to lose.
Yep.
Like, he's got speed and this kid's going to do great things, but he's just got to find that spot where he's comfortable and he's not getting into so much trouble. But he's made the playoffs several years in a row. Made a run. We saw him start off at Joe Gibbs Racing, and I know me and my buddies play around. The first time I met Riley, he was driving the number 18 Toyota Supra Monster for Joe Gibbs Racing.
Right.
We were at Fan Day, and I was a Riley Herbst fan because I'm like, whoever's driving that 18 car, because of Kyle Busch, I'm like, they've got my eye because I want to see Kyle had made a name for himself with that number.
Right.
And that when you see that 18 car on the track, you expect it to do well. So it
Right.
always brought my eye. And when I saw Riley that day at Fan Day, I told him, I said, man, I'm rooting for you. It's like, but you know, we got to pick it up a little bit. And I pointed down at Kyle. I said, you got some big shoes to fill.
Right.
And he kind of looked at me and smirked like he was nervous, like, damn, these fans are really expecting this of me.
Right.
And we are. You're in top tier equipment, and it's not a pressure to him, but you're in top tier equipment. We know this kid can get it done.
Yep.
But the first unforeseen things like the small accidents, and I hate it for Riley because he could have had a hell of a career already.
Right.
And it's just little things like that. But I'm excited to see where Cole and Riley end up next year with the Stewart Haas Racing not having a race team next year.
Yep. And then I don't think we can expect Riley to lose Monster. I think they're in for a couple more years. So he's going to have a sponsor, one of the best sponsors moving forward. So as far as Cole with his main sponsor being Haas, Racing, that's going to be an interesting transition for him moving forward next season. We were talking about the weather in Portland. Good news is the rain looks like it's going to hold off until Sunday. And Saturday, it looks like it's going to be cloudy all day long. Temperatures in the mid 60s, which is going to make a grippy racetrack for some of these guys. No rain tomorrow. So they should be good to go on their slicks.
Hey, and I mean, even if it does, we got windshield wipers and we got wet weather tires ready. It's a road course.
They're racing no matter what.
So I believe Portland, though, I hope it produces a better race when it's dry. These last couple years, because of how wet and how small and skinny that racetrack is. Right. It makes the racing really intense because these guys will take it 2 and try to put it 3 wide, and you're like right. It's just a nail biter, man. Portland's an awesome race, and I don't see why a lot of people have just completely complained about it. I mean, I get the weather and what it does to the race because you can't be as aggressive as you want because the slightest mistake and you're off in the woods.
You're selling off in the grid. Yep.
So, I mean, it is what it is. I'm excited to see if it stays dry. I'm excited to see what kind of races produces. But the 2 last wet races have been pretty good races.
Oh, absolutely. It adds an extra level of talent that we get to see out of some of these guys and how well they can manage these ginormous race cars. I say ginormous, these heavy race cars, race trucks, and the way they're able to keep them on the track. And some of them don't, but it's a product of the beating and banging that we've talked about before. And then of course, wet tires, the treaded tires don't always hold up as well as they could. Right. So it's always fun. Go ahead.
And sometimes with these wet weather tires, you see some of these guys that normally don't run so good on slicks. As soon as it starts raining and those wet weather tires go off, these guys are from the back to the front. And Sheldon Creed is one of those guys. I expect, and I'll put this out there, I know we're not doing predictions yet. Sheldon Creed will be my pick to win the race at Portland this weekend.
Okay.
Now we're at Gateway this weekend. For some reason, I wanted to say we were in Iowa. I guess I'm just so excited about that race.
That's going to be a fun race.
Gateway, man, it's supposed to be hot, supposed to be slick. And that really doesn't really bode. We go back to the conversation about the blown brake rotors. That really doesn't look good for those guys either, because that puts so much more wear and tear and heat on those parts.
Right. It's definitely not going to help their brake situation at all, but these drivers are racing at the top level of their respective series, and they know, they have the information. They know that if they're heavy on their brakes, it could cause issues later on in the race. So look for them to make the necessary adjustments. Some guys will get the memo and some guys won't. So let's see who puts it to their advantage.
Now, as far as Cup guys, the last 2 years that we've seen, we're definitely going to throw Kyle Busch and Joey Logano in the mix right here, because those have been our last 2 winners, but those have been the 2 guys that have had the most speed. And I'm going to add this: Ryan Blaney has been extremely fast at this racetrack. Hasn't gotten a win yet. I believe has had a top 5 in both races.
Right.
Ryan, we really haven't seen a lot of Ryan this season and a defending Cup champion for 2023. Now, I know we didn't see a lot out of Ryan until the Coke 600 last year.
Right.
And then throughout the playoffs, we know he struggled. He got by, and then, boom, wins a Cup championship.
Right.
So we know Ryan's one of these guys that I want to call him a sleeper, because he's not one of these guys that goes out and you expect him to run out front all week or every week. But Ryan's always one of those guys that, if something clicks that week with the race car, if they fix just the slightest thing and he has that speed, Ryan's one of those guys to beat.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's one of those things where we've done it multiple times with Ryan. All of a sudden that 12 car shows up at the front of the pack towards the middle, towards the end of the season. And we're not surprised. It's like, here he comes again, so look for Ryan to be the same exact way this season. He is the defending NASCAR Cup Series champion of 2023. He's not going away, guys. So might be a slow start to the season, but look for it to start sharpening up.
And I mean, it was a slow start to the season for Ford as a whole.
Right. And it still hasn't been,
Well, so what we've got Brad Keselowski with a win.
Right.
I think that's it, ain't it?
Yeah, Joey Logano won the All-Star race, but that's not a points race, so it does not actually count towards Ford's win total this season. Ryan Blaney and is that the only Ford? No truck, right? No truck, no Xfinity.
I'm going back to look.
I think so.
Honestly, I think you actually may be right.
That is insane to me. But like I said, and I mentioned this on the podcast after Texas Motor Speedway, I spoke with a Ford representative, and he looked me up and down, and he was like, "Hey, when did the Ford start showing up?" And it was the last half of the season and into the playoffs when they really started rattling off wins, and ultimately the championship.
So yes, Brad Keselowski for Cup is the only win for Ford so far this year.
That is insanity. So we're 14 races in? You do 14 plus 10 plus 10. We're at 34 total races across the 3 series. I mean, that's crazy, bro.
And so starting Truck Series, okay, Ford doesn't have a win in the Truck Series just yet.
Correct.
Toyota has 2 wins in the Truck Series this year. The rest of them have been Chevrolet.
That's not surprising.
No, considering that we have the likes of Nick Sanchez, Kyle Busch. Look here, Ross Chastain.
Yep.
These are guys that we don't expect anything less from.
Right.
Raja Carruth. We mentioned him with the backing of Hendrick Motorsports. I believe that's where Spire is getting most of their equipment, if I'm not mistaken. They have an affiliation with Hendrick Motorsports, correct?
Yes, and I believe you've even said that their headquarters, their campus is right there on, if not connected to Hendrick. Do I remember that correctly?
No. So Colleague is on RCR's campus.
My mistake. Okay, I apologize.
Spire, I'm not sure. I think their Cup Series shop is in the same shop as their Truck Series.
Okay.
So if that's the case, then it'll be the old Kyle Busch Motorsports building. They bought the building and everything from Kyle.
Right.
So, which is not that bad, because Hendrick Motorsports is not that bad of a drive from Kyle Busch Motorsports. It's like a 20 or 30-minute drive.
Right.
The guys that I feel like could be fast this weekend, and I know we haven't seen practice and qualifying just yet. As much as I hate Ford, I can't bet them out. RFK as a whole, man, I feel like this could be Brad's year to win his second championship.
Right.
Chris Buescher, how just off the wall and mind-blowing it would be. Chris Buescher ends up in Phoenix, the 2024 Cup Series champion. Like, what all the things that does for Chris's career, man.
Right.
The money that brings into RFK and the sponsorship, and which they don't really have a problem with sponsorship right now, especially with the BuildSubmarines.com being on board. For the 6 and the 17.
Yep.
I will say the one sponsor I still miss, and I feel like it's just because it's a Ryan Newman thing. I miss seeing Oscar Mayer on that 6 car.
That orange and yellow popped, man.
Yeah, it would almost look like a Sunny D car, and those Sunny D colors, man, they pop, and just those. That's another thing too. Where are our paint schemes going? I know we've had some good looking paint schemes here and there, and I know we haven't done a bunch of research on why these sponsors are not allowing these guys to have free form with the design on their race cars.
I think I have a really good answer to this question, and it actually covers all facets of sports, because with the progression of technology, with the progression of the amount of entertainment that we all intake, right? And we're all only getting older. I feel like we've just seen so much of what we could see already, right? Like whether it be football highlights, basketball highlights, racing highlights, we've all been on YouTube. We've watched it all. We've seen it all. So now we're just so used to have seen it's almost like you can't do much more, right? I know you technically can, but we've seen so many different, it seems like nobody's impressed anymore. Is that fair to say? Or not nobody, but a lot of people just aren't impressed anymore. And so teams take that as, well, if people aren't as impressed with things anymore, maybe we can just slap our logo on the side of the car and it won't matter. Whereas some teams still take a lot of pride, and I'm sorry, Kevin, a lot of teams still take a lot of pride in the cars that they put out. Your track houses, your 2311s. Hendrick has put out some really just amazing schemes. Hi, youngin'. How you doing?
Say hi.
For those who are listening on Spotify, Kevin's daughter just showed up.
Hey, and Wade, Dad's got a good battle going right here in NASCAR. I had her in some Kyle Busch gear, and now Poppy has got her transitioning over to the 9 car, and I'm very upset about it.
She can choose whoever she wants.
Yep, and I told her, I told her as long as she didn't root for Martin Truex Jr., we're good. No, she's her own person. She absolutely loves Kyle. She absolutely loves Chase. Damn, I'll have to send you the picture. I've got a picture hanging up in the wall. The very first time she ever met Kyle Busch, we were at my local dirt track down here when they were still doing the Bristol Dirt Race.
Right.
He came down here with Kyle Larson, Chase Briscoe, to get some track time at a local dirt track to get ready. And we got pit passes. And the picture, she walked up to Kyle. Kyle signed her car, signed her shirt, knelt down right beside her with his hand on her shoulder. And the grin, just the pure happiness that's on her face. It's one of my most favorite pictures. We've not got to do that with Chase Elliott yet. So I think that'll be the deciding factor.
Maybe we'll run into him out at Bristol here in a couple months.
And I always plan on that too, because there's so much that goes on between the Chevy trailer and just everything that's going around, the autograph signings off site. So I'm sure that we'll probably run into several drivers. I know Kyle Larson, Bowman. He normally signs autographs at one of the tire dealerships down here.
Right. The sponsors that usually they'll show up and at the actual locations and do a signing. Back when COTA hit in March, Tyler Reddick was at the local HEB, and HEB here in Texas is our big grocery chain. And they had a ginormous Monster energy drink display thing set up, a line leading up to them. It was a really cool thing. I know Austin Cindric shows up at Discount Tire. AJ Allmendinger shows up at the Roadrunner gas stations whenever there's one nearby the track.
And then you have Food City, that's a thing down here in Tennessee. Obviously with the Bristol, the Food City 500.
Right.
Food City around here, especially Bass Pro, they get with Food City and they do a big thing. Martin Truex Jr., I know the last time we went to Bass Pro was MTJ, Austin Dillon, Ryan Newman, Clint Boyer, and Daniel Hemrick when he was still driving the 8 car for RCR.
Right.
There's so much stuff to do, and it's awesome. And I feel like that's why I love NASCAR so much, is because no other sport allows us this close of an interaction with the athletes as NASCAR does.
And consistently too. I feel like a lot of fans that have been able to experience it take it for granted, because In the blink of an eye, it could all be taken away from us, right?
Look at the Dale Earnhardt Senior fans, and that's not trying to be a sick joke or nothing, but
No,
all
you're
these
being
guys
real.
that had tickets for the races in 2001 that were expecting to see Dale,
Right.
and then we had the tragedy happen. So
Right.
don't take it for granted. And every time and I've been a Kyle Busch fan since 2016, and I see Kyle at least twice a year, whether it's at the fan days, at the racetrack, going to KBM before he sold it. That my first time meeting Kyle Busch was at KBM the weekend of the 2018 Coke 600, which he just so happened to win that weekend.
Nice.
It was a Rowdy Nation fan day. If you guys haven't been to Kyle Busch Motorsport, well, it's Spire Motorsports now. There's a big glass, big sliding door. You can look into the race shop and all this stuff. Kyle made his way out there, and I was able to get a picture. And it doesn't even matter. And now Samantha knows me and my wife and my daughter. Every time we see her now, she's like, "Hey, how are you guys doing?" Like, she recognizes us. And that just says a lot, because when a driver and a driver's wife, when you come up to them, they're like, "Hey, how are you doing? I remember you." As an awesome, I still get starstruck every time I see Kyle, though.
Oh,
I get butterflies and my tummy just starts to turn in excitement. It's not like a sickening feeling, but
right.
And it's awesome. I get that little giddy schoolgirl type feeling in my tummy, and it's
a little starstruck. We invest so much of our time and a lot of our energy in watching these guys perform, and guys and girls, and we appreciate their craft and we love what they're able to do. And so when we see him in person and you kind of cross paths with him, when I met Kyle Busch, I mean, he was focused on what he was doing. He was headed towards the media center to do his media time. He still grabbed my car, made eye contact with me. "Hey, Mr. Busch, thank you very much. My name is Don. Can I please have your autograph?" And he grabbed my pen and slapped some paint on it. And it was just a cool little moment for me. I'm not a huge Kyle Busch fan, but I respect what Kyle Busch does on the racetrack. I appreciate what he's done for the sport of NASCAR. I appreciate what he does outside of the sport and help other drivers and other teams build up their dreams. That's all priceless stuff that people don't really understand, and I appreciate it.
And I do too. And a lot of people, they take for granted all of that stuff. I think a lot of people hate on Bubba Wallace and Kyle Busch and these guys, because when we're getting these guys' attention at the racetrack, if they're in their race suit on the way to an autograph signing or a media session or practice or qualifying something, or the garage to go over S&T data, these guys are in tunnel vision. They're in work mode.
Right.
And a lot of people are like, "Well, Kyle just waved that." What? He's busy. He's working. This is his day job. It'd be like me going to the bank and being like, "Hey, bro, can I borrow $30?" and bothering you while you're at work. And it's cool. And I feel like a lot of these race shops we have access to as well, especially Kyle Busch Motorsports, because we were able to go in there and see all these fire suits and the insane amount of trophies he had. Both Bristol Suite sets, all the trucks and Xfinity and Cup cars were all laid out there on the floor for you to go. You were this far from.
Right.
The championship, the cars that he won both championships in were sitting in the lobby of Kyle Busch Motorsports.
That's incredible.
The car he won his very first race with, the number 5 Kellogg's California race win, sitting in the lobby of Kyle Busch Motorsports.
That's Gen 4 is gorgeous, ain't it?
Man, it's just, and you're like, man, they look so ugly on TV, and then you get up close and personal, you're like, these man, the way that you can get up and close and personal with these guys, don't take it for granted. If you guys get a bad taste in your mouth about Bubba or Kyle because of the reaction you had at the track, go to an autograph signing. Go to something that's not being done at the racetrack. Go to the race shop and just catch them, get an autograph, get a picture. These guys are in work mode, so of course they're gonna seem like what, babe?
Can I have my phone, please?
Yes, ma'am. I can find it. But these guys do a lot for the sport, a lot for their fans. And for those of you guys, we've talked about it several times. Kyle Busch and Samantha Busch had the Bundle of Joy Foundation. Joey Logano's got the Drive for Autism stuff that he does.
Right.
And several other drivers like MTJ with the Sherry Strong and just all that stuff. And just, if you call yourself a race fan but don't know what your driver does outside the racetrack or even a race fan,
Right. Just do a little research, guys. Just your Google search bar is right there. Instead of scrolling Instagram for 5 minutes, go look up some information on some of the drivers you like and some of the ones you might not like as much. You might be surprised some of the charities and foundations these guys give to and help out might be right up your needs and wants later on in life. You never know.
And Kyle Busch, now I'm not sure how much they are now. I know it was a thing. So when he drove the 18 car for the Bundle of Joy Foundation, a couple times a year, Kyle, especially at Halloween, they'll design a helmet. It'll get auctioned off.
Yep.
Bundle of Joy Foundation, for every $18, you got a raffle ticket for every $18. Of course, they did it with the car number. But they would raffle off the race suit, the race used helmet, maybe T-shirts, a signed die cast, autographed hat, something like that. And a lot of these people don't understand. You could spend $36 and win a race used helmet that, if you find that on Marketplace, $600, $700, $800 if it's not autographed.
Most likely, right?
So I mean, there's cool things that your drivers be involved in.
Yep.
And then follow the NASCAR Hall of Fame. They constantly have things going on. If you guys haven't been to the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and Don, you probably haven't been just yet.
Not yet. I'm working on it.
The pit stop challenge that they have inside the Hall of Fame. You get to fill up a car, or do the jacks, the
Tire change,
and the fuel.
Yep.
So they have a hauler in there that you get to walk through and see all the different things, and it's all been updated within the last year and a half. So it's up to date with the current cars, current race teams. They have old Gen 6 race cars on a racetrack, partial racetrack, that you guys can actually go sit in, and the windshields are video game screens. These are full-size race car simulators for iRacing. And the experience is so cool. Get to the race shops. I mean, I drove almost 5 hours to go to RCR. Left here at like 3 a.m, got there at 6 o'clock, and was there till 6 o'clock.
Worth every second.
And I could have passed out, went to the hospital, and I'd probably yanked all the veins out, or all my IVs, and went straight back to the race shop.
Right.
As a race fan, you can't call yourself a race fan if you don't get to do this. Now, if you live obviously across the country, Don, you live over in Texas, it's hard to get over to the race shops when the only way that you really could get over there is with a skip and a hop on an airplane.
Right. I plan on driving to Bristol here in a few months. I'm still working out my my housing accommodations, but the plan is to drive up to Bristol.
If you need any help with that after the show, let me know. And my cousin actually she works for a Holiday Inn.
Oh, no
and
shit.
I might be able to get you a discount. I'm not sure what the price is and all that stuff, but I might be able to get you a discount on a hotel between here and Bristol, because Bristol and Johnson City, for 3 days, you're going to pay almost $1,000 because they jacked the prices up.
Right.
So, but yeah, we'll talk more about that. But as far as this weekend, we're running on an hour. I know we're probably going to have brake failures like we always do here at Gateway. We talked about that last night a little bit earlier.
Right.
I'm sure with as hot as it's supposed to be, it would not surprise me if we see blown tires because of the beads getting too hot.
Absolutely.
And that's not just because.
Yeah, look for tire failures for sure.
I feel like with as hot as this racetrack's going to get, we are going to have cording like no other.
Absolutely. And it's going to be fun to watch which drivers are able to manage it and which ones are going to suffer and wreck their cars out from it.
And I think a lot of the problems that we're going to see are going to be out of the left fronts and the right rears, especially with turns 1 and 2. As deep and narrow as turn 1 and 2 is at Gateway, everybody's going to be leaning on that right rear, especially for the drive off that corner.
Right.
And we know guys, Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin, Ross Chastain, those guys, we know they can do it, but it doesn't mean it's an easy task.
Correct.
As far as my pick for this weekend, I don't know if it's going to be Brad Keselowski or Chris Buescher, but I'm going to have to RFK, and this is Kyle Busch fan, and I know we were fast last year, and if we get a win, you'll hear about it on the show Tuesday. Trust me. If we get a win, you'll hear about it. I feel like RFK gets a win in Gateway this weekend.
Okay.
And as strong as Ford has been, and I know the results don't show it because Ford has only got 2 wins technically if you count the All-Star race, but they've only got 1 points paying race. Chris Buescher is on fire right now, man. On fire. I think this is the best that we've seen him in forever. He rattled off 3 wins last year. A win the year before that came at the Bristol night race.
Right.
And that team, and I feel like Brad going over there is what has made this team what it is now. That leadership and that driver mentality that Brad K has brought over to RFK. I feel like that's helped Chris Buescher out a whole lot. Not that Ryan Newman wasn't any help, but Ryan was a different generation driver, and we saw him struggle with the Gen 6 car.
Yep.
But the man won, that Gen 4 car we saw in that 12 car. The man won Daytona 500, several races. And Chris Buescher needed somebody a little younger to let him know, hey, this is what's going on, and this is what we're going to do, and this is how this is going to happen.
Right.
And of course, like I said, I'm not taking anything away from Ryan, because that man, if he doesn't end up in the Hall of Fame, he's been robbed.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So now Xfinity wise, like I said, I feel like Sheldon Creed is going to be the guy to get it done this weekend. He's had tremendous speed the last couple weeks, awesome runs. He's come into some contact and some things that are out of his control. I feel like this week is the week that Sheldon says, no, we're done playing around. We're going to go out here. We're going to do our business, and we're going to put it in victory lane.
Yeah. And you already made your truck pick, right?
Truck pick, choo-choo, maybe.
Remember.
Well, let's say.
As far as Xfinity, give me Shane, because Shane and them road courses, boy, Coda, man, I thought I was going to be hauling butt down to that celebration with Shane and them boys, and it just wasn't meant to be. And Kyle Larson snagged that one from him. Look for him to bounce back at this road course.
Trucks, you can't bet against Raja Karuth.
Right.
The trucks are going to be at Gateway. It's a 1.25 miles. He's got a win on 1.5 miles.
Yep.
Gateway is one of these more challenging racetracks. I don't think Raja has been on. Did he run last year on this racetrack?
I don't remember offhand.
Because I think this is his first full year or full season, isn't it?
Yes, correct.
In the trucks. Okay, so I don't think he ran this race last year. He's going to have a lot of learning to do. But Raja is in no way, shape, or form is he not capable.
Absolutely.
And he's proved that with a win at Vegas. If it had been a super speedway win or something like that, maybe we say it's a fluke win. But the fact that he had speed, did what he did with the pit strategy and everything else at Vegas, the boy, he's got the talent. He's got the speed. He's got the backing of Hendrick Motorsports, HendrickCars.com.
Yep.
And I'm excited to see what Raja does this weekend.
Yeah, I can't bet against Raja for sure. As far as a winner, I got to go with Corey. Corey's just on another level, man. He's just too good. He's too good for trucks. Let me get that out of the way, because no matter what happens next season, he's going to have something full-time in either Xfinity.
He'll be at Joe Gibbs Racing next year.
And
whether it's Cup or Xfinity, he'll be over at AGR.
Right. Well, hopefully he's at 2311 in Cup, but we'll see how that plays out. He's got a race, I believe at Iowa in the 50 car for 2311 here coming up. So look for that job interview, that first date, to be something special.
Isn't he who's driving it at Nashville? Isn't he driving it in
Nashville? You're correct. I'm sorry.
I was going to say it. Well, and I think, so what is it? The Gold 50 is what they're calling it?
Yeah, the golden ticket.
So I would not expect any less for that ride to go to Corey Heim, unless, of course, like we talked about last night, unless Kyle Busch makes a move over to 2311, or we get one of these Toyota guys over here. Man, I hate that Brennan Queen is not running this weekend. That kid had me so excited 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
First truck start in a Tricon garage. I'm not sure if he's set up for any more starts in the truck series this year.
Yeah, I follow Tricon on social media, and I have not seen his name pop up again. Now, I would not be surprised if people start putting him in a seat here coming up, especially with how well he performed at that racetrack there at North Wilkesboro.
Oh yeah.
So definitely look for him to have more opportunities here moving forward. Now we haven't even mentioned, and I know we're running short on time. We haven't even mentioned. Man, I completely lost my train of thought. With Butterbean. Maybe he doesn't want a full-time ride. Would that be? Not everybody is built for this.
And maybe he made the decision with his, I feel like a first career start at a place like North Wilkesboro, especially a repave, in a track with the characteristics that North Wilkesboro has. A lot of the guys said that it was not extremely hard, but North Wilkesboro is a challenging racetrack because of how far the track changes, how far up the track you run, how big of a diamond you into the corner. Right. To me, Butterbean did amazing. But if running that truck really beat him up that bad, I mean, make that decision. Get your, you have that little fangirl, schoolgirl. You're like, man, I'm getting in a truck. Right. And then you get done and you're like, screw that.
Yeah, maybe this ain't quite what I want to be. It's definitely not for everyone. It definitely takes a special person to be able to compete at a high level. That's for sure.
It really does. And we do have IndyCar this weekend.
Right.
And I'm going to have to go automatically with my boy, Joseph Newgarden. We went back-to-back last weekend, back-to-back Indy 500s. And he's shown tremendous speed all year. So it's hard to root against Team Penske and Joseph Newgarden in that Penske. Was it Honda? Right. Okay, so yeah. Honestly, I'm looking for IndyCar to shake it up this weekend. They did really well, and I have to congratulate Indy and our Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Roger Penske, IndyCar, and everybody that made last weekend happen. Even with the whole weather situation, the Kyle Larson situation, way to put on a race for the fans, man. That was one of the most exciting Indy 500s that I've watched. So I'm excited about that. We have IMSA this weekend. Since Kyle Busch ran the Rolex, the 24 hours at Daytona, I don't really get in the whole thing, but I've been Team Lexus all the way. That team that Kyle, they did really good for the Rolex 24, and that's the team that I'm definitely going to have to go with for this weekend too.
Right on. Awesome. To piggyback on your Joseph Newgarden, we actually saw Joseph Newgarden but actually address Pato O'Ward after the Indy 500, and Pato, of course, finished second place in a heartbreaking turn 3 pass when he lost the lead there to Joseph Newgarden for the final time. He's 25 years old. He's hungry. Look for him to be racing with a little vengeance this weekend, because when you feel like you're tasting milk entering turn 3, and then all of a sudden you're pulling into the garage with a second place first loser finish, look for a lot of drivers have done special things following that kind of heartbreaking loss. So look for
Pato O'Ward definitely becomes a pissed off teenager this weekend.
Right. With a man on a mission. So that'll be my pick for Indy. I don't think that's too far-fetched to go against the grain on Joseph Newgarden. Obviously, he's incredibly talented, and he's going to win many more races. But I'm going to go with my boy O'Ward and see how he does this weekend.
All right. What a pick.
I got to knock out my cup pick real quick because let me see. Jordan gave us RFK. So you're looking at the 6 and the 17 to be in victory lane this weekend. I like the double pick, by the way. because that team is just they're racing really strong right now, and all they're doing is getting more confident. It's tough for me to pick Ford right now because of the struggles that they've displayed in the 2024 NASCAR season. I'm gonna have to go with Toyota, and I think Martin Truex Jr. has stayed relatively.
Wow, that's bold. That's
right,
bold.
Right.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. I think Martin Truex Jr., he usually ends up rattling off a win in the middle of the season, regardless of what track it's at, because he's good at all the tracks.
And he showed a lot of speed this past weekend at Charlotte too. So
Correct.
Take that momentum into this week, and you definitely don't want to give somebody like Martin Truex Jr. confidence going into a racetrack that he runs really well at too.
Correct. Of course, I have my favorite driver in Tyler Reddick. I would love for him to win, but look for Martin. I would be really interesting to see Martin carry that momentum from last week into this week.
Man, we're gonna have. There's a lot. Cup practice starts at 9:00 in the morning.
They got a 9:00 practice, and I think their qualifying is at
9:45.
Oh, they pushed it all the way. Okay, 9:45. My goodness, where am I at? Okay.
Well, the AM.
Right.
So, practice and qualifying right back to back. I feel, and since we're on the subject, I feel like NASCAR probably needs to change that. I know we've stated multiple times we need to get the fan base behind to get NASCAR to let us have hour-long practice sessions back. I feel like that's what. Yeah, I feel like that's why a lot of our veterans so far, and I'm not saying all of them, a lot of them, and at the top of that list being Kyle Busch, because we know that Kyle, when we were getting 2-hour practices, this man was dominating because he was able to get the car pretty much in the ballpark where he wanted it, and all they had to do was do small adjustments throughout the race. And now, with a 20-minute practice session, not being able to take big swings during practice, you're having to take those big swings during the race. And if you take too big of a swing or not big enough, that costs you in the long run.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's killing practice down to 20 minutes to Group A and Group B. That's just killed a lot of momentum for NASCAR, a lot of momentum for these drivers. But I feel like qualifying needs to be set aside for different, because we have all these guys that I don't feel like qualify so well, because especially like Group B, we get done with practice and then not even 10 minutes later, we're into qualifying. And some of these Group B guys are, and sometimes, Group A, I know they don't do Group B practice and then Group B qualifying. They give them, that time to let the cars cool down.
They have they don't have an advantage. They all have the equal space between their practice and their qualifying.
Now, I believe Group A, whoever's in Group A, has a better advantage just because they have several more minutes between qualifying and practice than what Group B does.
Right.
Especially if there's a red flag due to debris on the racetrack or an accident or something like that. So if you end up at Group B, I feel like you end up on the shit end of the stick. That's just coming from a fan, not complaining about it, but that's just the way I feel.
And it'd be interesting if we ran numbers and see who actually is getting pole positions and where they're actually qualifying in regards to everyone else. That'd be kind of a cool statistic to kind of chase and see where people are actually lining up and whether it's an advantage or a disadvantage.
And I actually might do that this weekend. I've got a notebook. I'll start writing down practice times, and then qualifying times, and see where the trend is from Group A to Group B, from practice to qualifying, and see where the pole and everybody's sitting. And we might be able to make that, if there is any trend or any sort of pattern there, we might be able to figure that out and see maybe if NASCAR is doing this for a reason.
Right. I don't want to be the guy that rains on everybody's race weekend, but it looks
we already got rain last weekend. Don't do it. Don't do it.
I'm not doing it. All right. Science and condensation and all that, everything we learned. Humidity, all that. The cold front meets the warm up upper level low, and rain happens. It looks like St. Louis, Missouri is calling for 60% chance of rain at the time of green flag for truck racing. It does show partly cloudy conditions for Sunday. So everybody that's listening and that has caught this part of the show, just kind of keep your heads up for rain. I mean, it says 55-60% chance all the way across the board. So we might be looking at a truck race in the morning and then the cup race later on that afternoon on Sunday.
And see, so another thing, and we'll wet weather tires. I believe a racetrack like Gateway, because of how flat it is,
Right.
in the corners, I feel like St. Louis should be one of these ones that we should be fitting our race cars and the trucks with windshield wipers. And if it rains, we need wet weather tires. I feel like this racetrack is one of those that we can do that at.
Yes, the speeds will be dramatically lower, but that doesn't mean the racing quality will drop at all. I think the racing quality might actually inflate regardless of the rain. The trucks will be slipping and sliding around. Perhaps maybe NASCAR has already done some testing and they realized maybe they've already done some on-track wet weather testing and it didn't do so well. Maybe that's why they haven't put it into, a race mode yet.
Well, and who knows? We'll probably figure that out later this season. I know we're halfway through, but that doesn't mean that the silly season started a month ago when the rumor started for SHR.
Right.
So anything from February all the way to Phoenix, anything can happen.
Yep.
And it's a week-to-week basis, but anything can happen, and anything can and will happen.
Right.
So I'm excited to see what the rest of the season has got to hold, especially with the news that we're getting. And for those of you listening, we still do not have an update on the Kyle Larson waiver situation. We are still waiting on NASCAR to announce whether they are going to allow Kyle Larson to have a playoff waiver or if he's just going to be SOL.
We'll be following that very closely. For those listening, we're on top of that story.
Well, yeah, everybody's still tracking him like an Amazon package. So,
right.
But man, Don, it's an hour and 16 minutes, buddy. We got all of it in. I am ready for a weekend of racing. We'll get after it back on Tuesday and then talk about everything. And we'll, like I said, I'll get the times and stuff written down and see where our trend and all that stuff. We might be able to figure out just what NASCAR is trying to do.
Right.
And I know that it may be different because, we have a different car, different tire compound, different everything when it comes to the Cup Series since this new car. So who knows? And most of these changes may seem sudden to us, but NASCAR may have put them in effect 7-8 months ago.
Oh, absolutely.
I
fail to believe
seeing the results of it. So
NASCAR doesn't blindly make decisions. That's not going to be beneficial to their business whatsoever. All of their stuff is premeditated, and they've been working on it behind the scenes way before anything is released to the public or to the fans.
So as soon as NASCAR makes a decision and as soon as we find out about it, you guys will be able to hear about it here. And I definitely know that we'll go into more detail whether the decision is to let Larson have that waiver or not. Because I'm sure there'll be a lot of conversation around, especially if they do not give Larson this waiver. There's going to be a lot of pissed off people, Kyle Larson included.
Yep.
And if they do, there's still going to be a lot of pissed off people. So again, damned if you do, damned if you don't. But
50-50.
We'll see where that 50-50 marker hits right down the line. But guys, this is Motor Racing Podcast, the hub. Don, we're going to enjoy this weekend of racing, brother, and we'll see you.